Marcus Thorne, a man whose name was synonymous with ruthless efficiency and staggering wealth, moved through the corridors of the city's premier hospital with a speed that belied his usual measured pace. The hospital's sterile, quiet atmosphere felt like a harsh reality check against the insulated luxury of his everyday life. He was a man who owned half the skyline and brokered deals worth national budgets, but right now, his multi-billion-dollar empire felt utterly insignificant. A single phone call had shattered his world. His mother, the anchor of his tumultuous life, the woman who had single-handedly raised him on a nurse's salary, had suffered a massive stroke. The news had drained the color from his world and filled him with a cold, creeping fear he hadn't experienced since childhood. He pushed through the emergency room doors, his designer suit suddenly feeling like a costume, a symbol of a life he had pursued with blinding ambition while perhaps losing sight of the only person who truly mattered. He had always known this day would come, the day her strength would fail, and the weight of his neglect felt crushing in his chest. As he neared the ICU waiting area, his pace slowed. He saw a figure, draped in immaculate silk and pearls, sitting with an air of sophisticated detachment that stood in stark contrast to the harried families and worried faces surrounding her. It was Alara Vance, his fiancée. She was on her phone, her voice a low, musical titter that seemed entirely out of place in this somber wing of the hospital. Marcus felt a small measure of relief. She was here, she cared. He moved closer, intending to call her name, but a fragment of her conversation stopped him dead in his tracks, freezing him in the shadow of the corridor. "Honestly, I don't see the point in waiting around," she was saying, her tone a mixture of impatience and calculation. "Dr. Matthews said it could be days, even weeks. This is such a bore. And the Santorini wedding is in 3 months, I simply cannot have her lingering in this state and throwing the entire schedule off. I told Mark I'd be here, but I think I'm going to just slip out. He's so emotional right now, he won't even notice I'm gone for a bit." Marcus's heart, which had been a frantic drumbeat of worry for his mother, suddenly turned into a cold, heavy stone. He listened, his mind struggling to process the icy detachment in her voice. "Anyway, there's always a silver lining, isn't there, darling?" she continued, the titter returning. "Once the trust fund is released, our budget for the European honeymoon basically triples. It's an inconvenience now, but financially, it's actually a windfall. I just hope he gets a grip soon. His public image is important, and a weepy billionaire isn't a good look." A wave of profound nausea washed over Marcus. The woman he had chosen to be his partner, the one he planned to spend his life with, was treating his mother's suffering and potential death as a minor logistical hurdle and a financial opportunity. The betrayal was so sharp, so utterly devoid of humanity, that he couldn't speak, couldn't move. He simply turned and walked away, the noise of the hospital fading to a dull hum, his entire worldview shattering into a million pieces. The empire he had built on cold logic had left him utterly blind to the warmth of a genuine heart, and he had placed his trust in a calculating stranger. He found a secluded corner near a quiet stairwell, the sterile smell of antiseptic a stark reminder of the fragile nature of life and the toxic nature of his own choices. The guilt began to set in, a suffocating blanket. He had spent years prioritizing board meetings over quiet dinners with his mother, market analytics over her stories from the old neighborhood, the pursuit of more wealth over the cultivation of a meaningful connection. He was just as much to blame as Alara, perhaps more so. He had allowed his life to become so consumed by the acquisition of wealth and status that he had forgotten the simple, honest love that had raised him. The hospital, with its raw human drama of life and death, was a cruel mirror reflecting his own profound emptiness and the moral bankruptcy of his chosen circle. The pain of the betrayal by his fiancée was a sharp shock, but the pain of his own neglect was a deep, festering wound. A quiet conversation nearby drew his attention. A young, tired-looking man, his clothes clean but worn, was holding the hand of an elderly woman in a wheelchair. "It's okay, Ma," the man was saying, his voice rough with emotion but steady. "We'll figure out the insurance. I just need you to get better, that's all." The genuine care and unconditional love in that simple interaction struck Marcus harder than any business failure he'd ever faced. It was a stark, powerful contrast to Alara's callous words, a poignant reminder of what really mattered in a world obsessed with superficial value. This man, who likely struggled to make ends meet, possessed a wealth of human connection that Marcus, the billionaire, was utterly lacking. The hospital was a great equalizer, stripping away titles and bank balances to reveal the true state of a person's soul. He wiped the single tear that had escaped his eye and walked back towards the ICU. Elara was gone, vanished like a bad dream. He pushed open the heavy door to his mother's room. She lay still, pale, connected to a labyrinth of machinery. The sight of her frail form brought a fresh wave of emotion. He approached her bedside and gently took her hand, the hand that had guided him through childhood, the hand that had held his face with pride at his first college graduation, a moment he had barely remembered in his climb to the top. He sat down, the powerful CEO replaced by a humbled, regretful son. He stayed there for hours, whispering to her, pouring out his heart, apologizing for all the missed moments, for his ambition that had blinded him to the most important person in his life, and for the shallow people he had allowed into his world. He didn't move as the night turned into dawn. A kind nurse checked in periodically, her gentle efficiency a source of quiet comfort. As the sun began to filter through the window, painting the room in a gentle gold, he felt a faint pressure on his hand. He looked up. His mother's eyelids fluttered, then opened. Her eyes, weary but filled with an undeniable love, met his. A weak, faint smile touched her lips. She couldn't speak, the stroke had taken that from her for now, but the message in her eyes was unmistakable: forgiveness, understanding, and love, as boundless and unconditional as the day he was born. In that moment, Marcus realized that he had been searching for validation and worth in all the wrong places, and the only true validation he needed was right here, in the unwavering love of his mother. The next few weeks were a period of intense focus, dedicated entirely to his mother's recovery. He ended things with Elara formally, a clean break. The ensuing society scandal and gossip pages didn't even register on his radar. He hired the best specialists, the most patient and compassionate therapists, not as a display of wealth, but as an act of pure, unadulterated love and devotion. His mother fought back with the same quiet strength she had always possessed. They moved to a quiet house near the coast, far from the relentless pace of the city, a place with a large, beautiful garden and slow sunrises. Marcus scaled back his empire significantly, finding a peace and purpose in these quiet moments that $1 billion could never buy. The ordeal in the hospital had been a brutal, necessary wake-up call. It had taught him the difference between transactional relationships and authentic love, between a life of success and a life of significance. He had rushed to the hospital a wealthy, powerful man and had found a painful truth about his fiancée and himself. In the end, he learned that true wealth isn't measured in digits in a bank account, but in the richness of genuine human connection and the unwavering love of family. Marcus Thorne, the billionaire, finally understood that the most valuable treasure in the world was something he could not buy: the simple, irreplaceable gift of time and love with his mother. That was the fortune that truly mattered, the only investment that yielded an eternal return.